beautiful Saturday morning. Much obliged to have you join us on the program Politics Today on independent television and radio. Today we have something quite interesting to talk about. But just before we go into that, let's bring you the news from Osun State, where Alhaji Ishaka Boyega Oyetola has been declared the winner of the Osun All Progressives Congress governorship primary ahead of the September 22 election in the state. Alhaji Oyetola polled 127,017 votes as against House of Representatives Deputy Speaker Yusuf Lasso, who scored 21,000 votes. Speaker of House of Assembly Nojim Salam came third. Alhaji Oyetola, a participant in the June 12th struggle, has been Governor Aregbesol's Chief of Staff since 2010. Announcing the results of the governorship primary at the party secretariat in Osogbo, Senator Ovie Omoagege, who represented Governor Abdulaziz Yari of Zamfara State, the chairman of the election committee, declared Adegboyega Ishaka Oyetola as the official flag bearer for the September 22 governorship election. Senator Omoagege commended all aspirants for displaying maturity during the exercise. Time will tell if everyone is actually satisfied with the outcome of that one. With that, I say welcome to Politics Today on independent television and radio. My name is Sonny Duke Okosun. Today, I have with me in the studio General Idada Ikmowe, retired Esquire. General, many thanks for joining us on the program.
My pleasure, and I'm glad to have an opportunity to interact with our people again.
Okay. I also have with us in the studio Pastor Collins Sokonofa, who's been away. I can't remember how long you've been away, but good to have you in the studio, Pastor Collins.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
We'll be expecting Barrister Eddie Asenogwa and Barrister Ovensari Otame to join this conversation. On July 5, President Muhammadu Buhari signed the Executive Order number 6. The order mandates the forfeiture of assets that are suspected to have been corruptly acquired. That done, it's been attracting reactions and counter-reactions. The import of the executive order is to ensure that such assets that have been alleged to have been corruptly acquired either by individuals or organizations will not dissipate or reduce as the case goes on. But some legal luminaries have been commenting on this against the background that there are statutory agencies saddled with the responsibility of fighting corruption. And this action has been something that is usually done with the courts. I mean, we had instances where the EFCC will seek an interim order forfeiting an asset that is alleged to be corruptly acquired. Isn't this a negation of all of these powers? These are some of the questions we'll be asking on the program. Well, some others on the other side of the political divide are saying this executive order number 6 is an order of political witch hunt to pull down those called political enemies. We'll also examine all of that in the course of the program. Gentlemen, one more time, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Okay, let me start with Barrister Idada Ikmowe, General Idada Ikmowe, Esquire, retired. Thank you so much for coming. Yeah, the import of this order, like I just gave the introduction, is to forfeit the assets that is alleged to have been acquired by individual or institutions corruptly. Give us your understanding of this executive order as a starting point.
Thank you very much. Well, since the 5th of July, when this Executive Order number 6 came into force, I've had the privilege of reading through the papers and listening to the electronic media to see the various comments by various writers. Like you indicated, there are those, especially from the government side and those who have sympathy for the government, who say everything about that order is perfect. And of course, there are others who naturally toe another line to say it is a witch hunt instrument and will not further the interest of this country. Okay. The first thing I want to say is that I do not like people who come out and, use very obscene, very aggressive words on the personality of the president. Because whether we like it or not,
he's the president.
That is the president of this country.
Yeah.
And it requires some respect.
Okay.
Besides, we must also know that although in the presidential system the buck ends on the table of the president, the truth is that more often than not, what the president does or writes depends on his advisors. So more often than not, you find that it is the output of the aides that either make or mar the president's reputation. Right. I won't say that. I personally feel that, and I'm talking from the legal viewpoint, that order is more of an order of the nature, an order of the nature of law. And in a country where the hallmark of the Constitution is separation of powers, the executive has its powers, legislature has its power, and the judiciary has its powers. Care must be taken so that none of them is seen to take over
the duties
of the other. I personally believe that the aim and motive behind the order is good. But I regret to say that the instrumentality, to my mind, is very faulty.
Okay, I'll come back to you on that. Pastor Collins Okonofwa, the import of the order is to mandate the forfeiture of all assets acquired by individuals or institutions allegedly in a corrupt manner. But there's a feeling that this order is against several instruments already in existence in anti-corruption agencies like the EFCC and the ICPC. So why then this order? Do you subscribe to that?
Thank you. I'll just start by saying to you that this order is nothing but a decree in disguise. Right? There are sufficient, even as you have pointed out, sufficient legislations that take care of properties that are illegally acquired. We recall that the former First Lady, Mrs. Patience Jonathan, had her properties and monies, all right, in different accounts forfeited or foreclosed until the case was disposed of under under legal instruments. Now, it is nothing but, as far as we are concerned, an attempt by the presidency to foreclose on the properties of opponents, political opponents, because so far we have seen that they have taken many people to court, all right, on account of allegations of illegally acquired properties or illegally acquired monies, and we hear that these cases are in court. So what brought about the necessity for this decree? Because now the only reason why they have to do this is to embarrass their political opponents and to put them under what you call political tension, such a way that they will not be able to face their political ambitions. All right, and there's nothing else to this decree. I call it the decree because it cannot be anything but a decree.
It's an executive order. That's what we know. It's an executive order.
It's a military decree in disguise. All right, and that is nothing. There's nothing else to it but that. The fact that this is an attempt by the presidency that has gradually come to acquire the clout of a military dictator, or if you like, a civilian dictator. That's what our president has become.
Pastor Collins, we know him as the president of the federal.
And I'm telling you that he's a civilian dictator.
Let's work in that.
I'm telling you that the acts of the president so far show him out as a civilian dictator. Nothing else but that. The fact that he comes hard on political opponents, even the EFCC that we have seen so far, how many members of the APC have been prosecuted? How many? Show me one. And you tell me at the same time you are bringing out now a decree to foreclose on people's properties under the guise of they are illegally acquired them. Where is the power of the judiciary? Is it not the judiciary that determines whether a property has been acquired illegally or legally? Why are you jumping into the judicial arena? That's not your business. You accuse somebody of acquiring the property illegally. You take the matter to court. The court now decides that yes, this property has been acquired illegally, or no. You don't assume you are the one who alleges and you are the one who prosecutes. You do not do that. All right, you cannot take the powers of the judiciary just because you are the president. That's a dictatorship.
Okay, let me pause you there, Pastor Collins. I'll come to you now, General Idaraikmo. You said a while ago that the import of this executive order is good, but you're not comfortable with the instrumentality. So what exactly were you trying to say?
The truth is that, as they say, you cannot construe even the devil's intention from his scripture. You don't judge a book by its cover. It is what is written and what is done that people interpret. With due regard for my friend, Pastor Ogorokwa, he said that this is the work of a proven detector. And this is definitely calculated, to cage some people and to trap some people.
Political opponents.
Political opponents.
Yes.
I will not go to that extent. I would like to concede good intention to the man whom Nigeria has voted to rule the whole country. And I will continue to concede that good intention until the contrary is evidently proved. Now, I think we should not just dwell with personal opinion and conjecture. Let us look at some of the provisions.
Okay.
For example, the order 6 says this order is concerned with the preservation of suspicious assets connected with corrupt and other related offenses. It's a very broad declaration. This is a declaration, a statement of opinion, in my view. And it goes on to say that corruption constitutes an unusual and extraordinary threat to the well-being, national security, and stability of the country's political and economic system. By and large, a true statement. By and large, a true statement. But it is overloaded because it tends to give a new description or coloration to what constitutes criminal offenses in our country. Then they went on to say that the order is to protect the dissipation. You already mentioned this.
Yeah.
Of any Nigerian citizen within the territory of the Federal Republic of Nigeria known to be a corrupt, to be a current or former government official or a politically exposed person who is or has been complicit in or has engaged in corrupt practices. That has stopped so far.
Okay, but let me just ask a question. The order mandates the forfeiture or the seizure of assets of individuals or institutions suspected to have corruptly acquired those assets.
Yes.
Now, doesn't that imply that you have not been taken to the court. The case has not been tested in court. It's as though you have been found guilty as charged as well.
I thought we were coming to that later.
No, that's not.
You have brought it.
Yes.
You have brought it, and so we might as well dwell with it or dwell in it. The truth is that there are already existing institutions. There are already existing laws. The ICPC law, the EFCC law, the criminal code, the recently passed, what do you call it, the Criminal Abjudication Act. It has a, I've forgotten it.
Okay.
That all these laws already say, they lay down what are offenses and how they are to be dealt with. So
he also says that a suspect is presumed innocent.
No, there's no question about that.
Yeah.
The president is. I am saying that if these laws are already there, any other law trying to amplify or add to the laws, certain terms that are used here are not within the criminal lexicon of Nigeria. So definitely they become questionable. But on the issue that you are raising of
presumed innocent.
Of course, there's no question about it.
Okay.
The Constitution presumes everybody innocent.
So when you seize a suspect's assets, all right?
Yeah.
Isn't that a slap on that presumption of innocence?
That's not even all.
Yeah.
There are procedures already entrenched in our laws for seizing or putting a hold on anybody's assets, whether it is landed material, property, or money, or whatever assets.
Okay.
These laws are there.
Okay, let me pause you there. I'll come back to you in a moment. Barrister Collins Okonofa. Yes, he's a barrister. So, the point I want to, the question I want to ask you has to do with the fact that we already have the procedures entrenched in our Constitution. And then secondly, there are agencies empowered to deal with these issues using the provisions of the Constitution. Doesn't this executive order, can't we see it as a testament to the fact that these agencies, they have failed in terms of fighting corruption?
They have been made redundant, because the question is, the new executive order says any person who is said to or found to be complicit or guilty of corruption. Now, who determines that? Who determines whether the person is complicit or whether the person is guilty of corruption? Who has not been taken to court? So, I've been sure from the beginning, the person is already found guilty by the president. And in the circumstance in which we dwell, now the judiciary appears to be guided by this executive order. We already suspect that this property is illegally acquired. Therefore, we have already seized it, waiting for your confirmation. All right. So that puts us in deep trouble. All right. And it means that every person should quickly navigate straight to the APC, because once you are in the APC, that order will not affect you. I can tell you that. I mean, and there's proof of that. All the people, all Jews of Kalu, this man of Bayelsa State, the former governor, all of them who were in PDP and they came under accusation, as soon as they navigated to APC, all their cases were dropped.
Mr. Kalu was in court recently over corruption allegations.
Oh no!
That cannot be.
It was only after.
Yes, he was in court recently over corruption allegations.
What about Timothy Silva?
Even though he is in the APC. So the answer is enough for us to advance on this program.
Whose properties were confiscated, and then as soon as he navigated to the APC, the properties were promptly returned to him. Now this has been the procedure. So I'm going to advise every person who knows that his property is likely to be acquired to quickly navigate to the APC in order to save his property. And this is simply the case. I'm not going to be dwelling on this, because the truth of the matter is that we know where it's coming from and where it's going. All right. Now, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. You can tell me all the good intentions as far as you want to tell me, but we know that this executive order, which I call a decree, is ill-motivated. and it is aimed at clamping down on political opponents, nothing more, nothing less. Because we know that at the end of the day, watch out. I give respect to General Dada and all the opinions that he has expressed, but I know that without a shadow of doubt, within a short time now, we are going to see if this decree is going to be implemented, find out who's going to affect.
Okay, let me come to Barrister Assanongwa. I remember that President Muhammadu Buhari at some point said that the judiciary is not helping the cause of fighting corruption. Do you think that may have precipitated this executive order number 6?
Well, whether or not that is what precipitated it, the bottom line is that it will still not achieve the purpose for which it is aimed to achieve. The powers of the respective arms of government is clearly well spelled out, and it is not permissible for the executive to foray into the sphere, the arena of the judicial arm. If we have issues and you think the judiciary is not living up to expectation, there are better ways of going about it. The executive order, as it were, tries to take over the function of the judiciary. What makes it even worse is the fact that it was aimed, a very bogus attempt was made to make it applicable to cases that are already pending. If you look at the law, the first schedule to that, well, I call it a law as it were, even though we call it an executive order. The first schedule to it listed about 155 cases that are already pending. And you say that this order will immediately begin to affect them. Mr. President, with the greatest respect, does not have such powers. It's like you are not telling the judges what to do with the cases that are already pending. Now, you find a situation, even as our laws are today, the prosecution, they know what to do. The EFCC, they have attempted to do it severally. Even before coming to court, they get an order ex parte, to confiscate your properties. So the law has made ample opportunities for some of these things. And if you are in court, even in civil cases where the government is not involved, you can bring an application to court that I believe that, this is the subject of this litigation. If nothing is done to protect it, if nothing is done to seize it and keep it, the party against whom an order may eventually be made is likely to dissipate it. Such applications can be brought to court, and the court, looking at it where there is merit in it, will go ahead to grant such an order. So there is absolutely nothing that can be achieved with what Mr. President has done by this executive order. It amounts to a gross usurpation of the powers of the judiciary, and nobody will allow that, not even the judiciary.
All right, but Mr. Tamara, I've also heard some analysts say we should test the executive order before the court to see its strengths, the workability, or the possibility of exploring it as an instrument to strengthen the fight against corruption. What are your thoughts?
Yes, well, very well. That is the only way out, rather than candidate the personalities. We must be hard on the issue and forget about being hard on the personality. That is my own foray over the whole SSL, because the question we should first of all ask ourselves is the president so empowered to make an executive order along that question? The answer is yes. By virtue of the legislation passed that he, of course, enjoys, and by virtue of Section 15 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, such powers exist. However, as a lawyer and as a man who has really watched the trend of events in this country, I am also of the view that such executive order number 6 is needless at this point in time. Why do I say so? We have existing legislations. The EFCC Act, the ICPC Act, the Criminal Code, the Application of Criminal Justice Law, and so on and so forth. So the doctrine of covering the field has already taken care of that. That doesn't mean that the law itself is a negation of the fundamental rights of citizens. Because even in the law, it is expressly stated, by virtue of Section 3, that there is anybody who perhaps feels that his property is being unnecessarily withheld or confiscated, such a person can approach court. But that is like putting the cart before the horse. Considering the fact that the existing legislation already made provision for all that. That, well, you can approach court as an officer of the anti-graft agency to say, well, make this order of interim forfeiture, and thereafter there is now an order of permanent forfeiture. So, if we now look at the existing legislation and we compare it with the executive order, one can come to the conclusion that there is really no need for it. But let us also look at some other countries. In the United Kingdom, for example, we have an executive order of unexplained wealth. By virtue of that, the anti-graft agency or the police can confiscate your property without recourse to courts. Are we now saying that such an executive order will amount to witch-hunting a political opponent? The answer is no. So now we quarrel about, oh, the president is a military man, he has a military background, no wonder this order is being made and all of that. That is really appealing to sentiment. Look, if the president is too long in his office as president, he stays 1 year or 4 more years thereafter, as the case may be. But I am not aware if there is an order made by president while in office will remain vacated after his tenure. So, if Mr. President has made an order, that order should be taken as an order that is made in the interest of the nation. That is not to say that we do not have orders that run contrary or that conflict with the existing laws. And when you have the judiciary being given the task of interpreting and such an order is nullified, that, of course, is a normal process, is a normal judicial process. So, Mr. President's intention, like General Ekure has rightly said, could be very good. But it is ill-timed. Again, the actors we have now, we cannot really rely on the personalities of investigators to do sincere job in carrying out such an order. Because whether we like it or not, such an order will amount to making officers of the anti-graft agencies to be unruly horse. And where you have such an unruly horse, you never can tell where it will take you to when you get assignments.
Okay.
That is our take.
All right. Let me come to you. Some of the thoughts canvassed already were those also expressed by the earlier two panelists here. Mr. Dadak, you want to ask?
Yes, I want to just briefly touch on the issue raised by Barrister Hassan Okwan and Barrister Professor Okonofa. The issue of the president's view about the judiciary. Everybody knew when he said that the judiciary is my greatest problem in this country.
In the fight against corruption.
Yes.
Yeah.
My friend Okonofa said, doesn't this order reveal lack of confidence in the existing security
anti-corruption agencies? I asked that question. Yeah.
A very relevant question. Very relevant questions. And I want to particularly say that when the president has gone to this extent to make this law, there are other things that I thought would be relevant in really dealing with this with this order, rather than expressing our personal opinion. The truth really is that the anti-corruption agencies, the security agencies in this country have failed woefully. And I'm sure they constitute a great embarrassment to the president. It is more than 10 years ago that I said publicly that unless the security architecture of this country is redone, reviewed, and reenacted, no magic can come from any president. That is still the position. And in fact, this law, by giving all the powers of coordination and implementation to the Attorney General, which is in excess of the power that the Attorney General has under the Constitution, and which makes it bad, it goes to point out that there is serious need for expertise. Experts will be put together to redraft our laws for fighting corruption and for ensuring security. There are so many inconsistencies, there are so many overlap, and what you get at the end of the day is unhealthy rivalry. And I'm sure it is this unhealthy rivalry that has pushed the president to say, okay, I trust this Attorney General, let me give him more power. But he has gone beyond the constitutional power by going to the realm of the legislature and even touching on the realm of the judiciary. So I think, like I said before, the system of security and anti-corruption is mortally sick.
Okay, let me push it there. I'll come to you by starting there as another one. Professor Collins, what options do we have in advancing the fight against corruption? Because we know that the present administration came on the premise of tackling corruption head on. And it looks like in the last 3 years, not so much has been achieved. And it also looks like the agencies entrusted with the responsibility of fighting corruption, they are incapacitated, because every now and then you take a man to court on allegations of corruption. The case is there for years, and sometimes there is not enough evidence to substantiate the case. What do you make of these issues in the fight against corruption?
Okay, so now there is not enough evidence to substantiate a case. Why do you file the case in the first place? Who goes to court without evidence? I mean, he who asserts must prove. And you know that. Before you go to court to assert that someone has committed a crime, you must have proof. So why do you go to court without proof? The reason is because you have a need to persecute, not prosecute. You have a need to persecute an individual. And that's the reason why you go to court without proof. You don't want to persecute him. So you label the person a thief, even without proof. Now this executive decree says...
Executive order.
Executive order,
Mr. Collins.
This executive decree says...
Executive order.
Okay.
It's an executive order.
Executive order
yes.
Says that if a man feels that his property has been illegally seized, he can go to court to prove his innocence. Do you know what that says? That the man should go to court and prove his innocence, not the government trying to prove the man's guilt. The man should go and prove his innocence, which negates our laws. Do you understand that our law says you are presumed innocent until you are proved guilty? Now this law says you are presumed guilty until you prove yourself innocent. So this clearly states that this man is out to persecute. And we must do away with that. I thank God that, I mean, some bodies have already taken this case to court and to deny the government the power to seize people's properties without any proof. Because now what it says is, once I suspect that this your property is illegally acquired, then I can seize it. So what is left? What is left? And who does the suspicion? The government. Who does the seizing? The government. And then that is he who alleges now does not need to prove. He who alleges is confirmed. That's a danger for us. And considering the president's antecedents, considering the fact that
let's take the antecedents. Let's talk about it now. Let's talk about it now.
I spoke about the fact that the intentions of this executive order are good.
Yeah.
All right, that are good intentions. And I'm telling you that you must look at the personality of the person, raising this executive order before you can now look at the order itself. The person who's raising this executive order has shown us that he has no patience or tolerance for opposition, and that we know therefore that this order has been made in respect of opponents, and there is no doubt about that. So we cannot let it stand. Okay, let me question. You wanted to say something?
Yes, for me, the law, well, the order, as it were, it's a law, because even if you look at it, tells you section this and all of that. The order is an embarrassment to this nation.
A complete embarrassment.
Now, it starts by saying that without prejudice to any law or suit, without prejudice.
Yes.
What does that mean?
You follow
It means that it does not ordinarily affect an already existing law. This one is probably made to complement without prejudice to any existing law or suit. Then you now went ahead to list some suits, cases, that you now say this same law is affecting.
So which means it's premeditated?
It's premeditated. You don't make a law and then you begin to look at people's faces to make the law. You went ahead to say this case is to be affected by this order. It is wrong. The general principle is that the law applicable to a matter is the law that was in existence when that course of action arose. Now, this order was not in place when Suswan did what he did. When all those cases that have been listed, 155 of them, became cases before the court. Now, the cases are already ongoing. You just bring an order and tell the judge, this order now will affect this case. Forgetting that you have started the law by saying without prejudice. It's an embarrassment. Now, to that extent, I may not entirely blame the last president unless it comes to the fore that he was not properly advised. Because when other nations, this is something that is in the international scene. Now, what is this country? What are we talking about? You now make an order. You say it will affect these cases. Whereas in the beginning, you said this order is without prejudice.
Okay.
To existing suits, to existing laws.
Okay. Barrister Otame, I heard General Dadakmowe said a while ago that the president has good intention. I mean, he said that repeatedly. Yes. Pastor Colin has also reiterated that. But he also said that this order...
No, I want to correct you.
No, I'm coming. Just a minute. Just a minute. This order came from... that he will blame the president's advisors.
Exactly.
Yes. How do you look at that?
The purpose of that is that the aides of the president...
Have they done well? Have they done well?
Obviously, the system needs to be overcome.
Come on now.
That is the truth of the matter. And there is no need hiding away from that obvious fact. Because the good intentions of Mr. President must not be thrown into such public odium that we are experiencing right now. The legislation is really an unfortunate one. However, we have to look at the entire system that they have brought into force and see how it can be corrected. But that is not to say, again, that such an order is of course a negation of somebody's right to property, like I have said earlier. If you look at the police acts that we inherited from the British government, the Nigerian police force has the power to seize a property if it is suspected to be stolen.
So why was there the need for this order?
Excuse me, sir. Now, what is the difference between a stolen property and the property that was brought by corruption? If you cannot explain how you got it. So the point I'm making is that Mr. President has not, by virtue of that order, of saying, seize the property if the property is suspected to be obtained from proceeds of corruption, has not in any form negated someone's...
But you said a while ago that he's already in the Police Act. So what is that the purpose of this executive order?
Listen, sir.
Yeah.
There was Police Act before anti-graft agencies laws were formulated and passed.
Okay.
Because, criminals have learned over time to steal without being caught. And so these laws are being developed and made. So, in which case, if you have such a scenario existing and you cannot question, the police can seize your car and say, where are the particulars? Where did you get it? Where is your purchase receipt and all of that? They seize it, they put it there. 6 months after they don't find you, they sell it off, they auction it.
Okay.
I mean, it is there. So, are we not saying that the police have been tyrannical by such an approach? So, let us call a spade a spade. The point is that we have these laws acts being made by virtue of the fact that they are subjugates and we cannot really say...
I'm sorry, I think I must say something.
Okay, so I'm just wondering, who do I take at the center? Let's take 1 minute. Let's take 1 minute.
We must make the point. There is a difference between a law and an order. The Police Act is a law. Where
This
the
is
law,
not-
yes, this is an order,
Okay.
and it does not fall within the jurisdiction of the president to make laws. That's the problem.
That's the
So,
responsibility of the legislature.
exactly. So the Police Act is there, the EFCC Act is there, the ICPC Act is there. There are several laws
Okay, let
passed by the National
Let
Assembly.
me proceed there.
So,
Pastor Collins.
that's the difference.
Now, if we want to implement this law, and if we say that the law was made with good intentions, I think we can start from somewhere. All right, there are allegations that are in the public space. For instance, the Chief of Army Staff was alleged to have acquired properties in Dubai and all of those places, monies for which he cannot account for. All right, I think we should start from somewhere. Or Shoboda's houses that have been banded and shown all around as properties that were illegally acquired. They could start from there as well to show that they are good intentions. All right, because if we don't do that and we don't start focusing on members of the opposition party, then we will know that this executive decree.
Okay, Pastor Collins, trust me, responsible to stay on course. Yes, General.
The reason I was raising a point of order on you, sorry, is that you quoted me almost out of context.
No, I didn't.
Because you said, I said the president has good intention.
That's what
I
you
said.
said. No, that's
I
what you
said, I concede good intention to him.
What's the difference? What I said was that you said that the president had a good intention, but that the instrumentality is what you question. That all the powers of cooperation, coordination, investigation is consecrated on one man, which is the Attorney General and Minister of Justice. That you're not comfortable with that.
Let me now conclude. Okay. Because I also added that not even the devil know how to control a man's intention.
No, sure.
So that qualified my total confidence in that the good intention.
Yes.
What I want to repeat at this point again, because I don't think it's coming back to me.
No.
Is that after taking a thorough look at all the wordings, because we are not dealing with we are dealing with something empirical, something we can see, a law that has been made. I have read that law as much as I could see, and I am in total agreement with all my colleagues who said that the law, I remember I said this order is an order in the nature of law.
Exactly.
And I went on to say that lawmaking is not the prerogative of the president. I think that is so.
Yeah.
So, which means actually that this is not the solution. This order is not the solution to Nigeria's problem. Okay. Nigeria's problem can be solved by a total, holistic, and realistic reappraisal of the role of the law enforcement and security.
Our studio line is open 052-290-573. That's the studio number. Dial it, your name, where you're calling from, then go ahead with a contribution. Please ensure that you're civil in your language and be very careful with your choice of words. Just to say that the views canvassed by guests here are entirely theirs, not our views or opinion as a media organization. Just to also let you know that we're expecting the CEO and founder of Sahara Reporters. He's got presidential aspirations to be joining us in the studio here any moment from now, having some chit chat with him on a couple of issues. Gentlemen, let's just do a final wrap on the conversation today on the program. Is this executive order dead on arrival? Because there seems to be a consensus that is ill-timed and is in contradiction with relevant sections of the Constitution, and is also in negation to the agencies that have the constitutional powers to fight corruption. I'm afraid our time is up, but just want to thank you guys for coming. Barrister Edia, thank you for coming. Barrister Otame, thank you for coming. Pastor Collins Okonova, thank you for coming. And Barrister Idada, thank you for coming. Now, we will take a minute break. I'm sure my PD will oblige me this. We're supposed to have a chit-chat with the founder of Sahara Reporter. That's Omoyele Sowore, who's supposed to be our guest today on the program, just for us to do a quick due diligence check to be sure he's in the studio. And I'll be back to finally wrap up the show. Stay tuned. Okay, well, more or less like an extension of the show, Politics Today on independent television and radio. Of course, I did say when we started the show that we're expecting a guest in the studio, the founder of Sahara Reporters. I mean, a thriving, foremost online publication that really has given Nigeria value for information access in the country. I'd like to thank very especially Omoyele Sowore for finding time to be here with us in the studio. Many thanks for coming.
Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Okay, we'll go straight to the point. You've always been a thorn in the flesh, using your platform against government agencies, personalities, institutions, and all of that. So at what point did this presidential ambition come up in your mind?
It came up after I realized that it is probably going to need more than just being a thorn in the flesh of people who have become accustomed to thorns to change the country fundamentally, and that I cannot continue, or we cannot continue to use borrowed hands and voices to speak for aspirations that are very, very urgently needed now. The development of a country of 480-something million people, people who need to go to school, children that need to have hospital, women that need to deliver babies safely, people who need water running out of taps. And the general welfare of our people cannot continue to be in the hands of people who have gotten accustomed to just abusing their rights, stealing their wealth, and frittering their way, and and turning around and putting us in a state of, in a despicable state. So, and it's also, we've reached a point where we cannot continue to use recycled people who have run out of ideas to run this country anymore. And we have seen that the country is not making any progress, and the country is almost dead. It's described as a failed country. We've just been told that Nigeria has taken over as the poorest place on earth to live. It used to be India. Yeah. So with the population that India had, China, they've been able to lift their people out of poverty. We have the advantage of the same population. We are digging our people deeper into poverty and misery. So this is what propelled me, that I'm not going to be the next person who report an election and claim that it's free and fair when I know it's not going to guarantee our people freedom or give them any kind of fairness. Considering what you have now seen, it's clear that we are not even going to have anything close to a free and fair election again, except we fight for it and put people who are vibrant, who have the intellect, who have the capacity, who have the stamina to govern this country appropriately and properly, the way it is done elsewhere.
You were always, some say, against the former administration, and to a large extent, some also say you benefited massively from the present administration in terms of image laundering, publicity stunt, and all of that. So it's as though you're back now to fight them with this ambition.
It's false to claim that I benefited from this government. Maybe you want to look at my history. I started as a student union leader at the University of Lagos and fought against military rule because that was our biggest problem at that time. After that, the biggest problem after the set of military rulers we had, or misrulers we had, was a bunch of civilians who were not interested in democratic parties. Like Obasanjo, I fought against his third term. And when Obasanjo left and put Yar'Adua there, I fought against the Yar'Adua cabal by exposing Yar'Adua's illness more than anybody ever did in the history of this country. That was how Jonathan came to power, because we fought strongly for him to be in power. When he came to power and started messing up, we went against him as well. And the same thing we did with the current. If I had benefited anything from them, they would have exposed me by now. I do not do business with people in government. I do business with my conscience. I do things that are right for this country, for my generation, and that's what I've done since I was in my 20s. You must have seen a video of me behind Abiola. Did I benefit from Abiola? Never. He even offered me $800,000. I'm sorry, Naira, in those days when it was a big deal. We never accepted because we said we're not fighting for money, we're fighting to bring about democratic
what are you bringing on the table now, and what are your chances, considering the fact that Nigerian politics, they say, is dirty and then is capital intensive? What are the plus for you in this ambition?
The plus for me are all these young people, 70% of them who are tired and no longer accepting of the old ways of doing things. 70% of them are members of our population. The poor people who are being used to play ping pong during election period. They are the people who are now saying they want to borrow out of poverty. And all the people in this country, and even outside the country, Nigerians who have had to become second slaves outside the shores of this country, who are desirous of coming back home, we're getting all the support from them. It is not just an election. This is a revolutionary referendum on the old order that is tired, that is degrading our people, that have destroyed them, that have divided us, and have used all kinds of means to create tension, to create division, to create destruction of our economy. You see the system. Nigeria is broke, and the people of Nigeria are broken. I don't see anybody, nobody has told me they want to continue with this old or tired order. And we have seen it already. So what am I bringing on the table? We're bringing fresh ideas to secure this country, to provide electricity, power, which I'm sure you would love in this studio, because then you don't have to put on generators that take all of your profit. To provide infrastructure. There's no reason why Benin Lagos Road has to remain the way it is since I almost was born. The first time I traveled on that road, when I came to Lagos in 1987, is the way it has been. They have been maintaining it. Billions of naira has been sunk into that. And that's not only in Benin, Lagos Road. There's roads broken everywhere. There's schools broken everywhere. The health system is broken. We don't have health care in this country. We have the capacity, we have the resources to make them happen, but it's not going to happen with the present crop of leaders you have who don't even know their left from their right. They only know how to take care of themselves. They only know how to steal, to destroy. They only know how to kill and assassinate. This country must burrow itself and take itself out of that situation and put itself on the path of progress and prosperity, which is possible. Other nations around us are doing well. Countries as small as Ghana, they are growing at 7%. That's what the economic growth rate is.
Okay.
Places like Benin Republic have electricity. Togo's got electricity. So we just have to do something different. Okay. And that's what the
it's been nice talking with you. I'm sure if you were here much earlier, probably would have had much time to talk. I've been speaking with Omoyele Sowore, the founder of Sahara Reporters. And of course, you know he's got presidential ambition, and he's in Benin for a program. Of course, you'll get to hear more of that in our subsequent newscast and presentation. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for having me, Sean. I hope to be back here again on ITV.